Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliet Clark, and we have a really different and exciting episode today. We're actually going to talk to one of my authors who has a book being released today. But before we go there, I want to remind you to go over and take our Promote, Profit, Publish quiz at www.promoteprofitpublishquiz.com. Find out if you are really ready to publish this book. Do you have the publisher picked out? Have you asked the right questions? Is your marketing planned? Is everything planned out before you just put it out there and expect people to buy it? Because that's not how it works, folks. There's a lot of work involved. Also, don't forget to go over, look at Karie's eyes are really big. Yes. Also, don't forget to go over to our channel, our YouTube channel, superbrandpublishing.com, and follow us over there, like us, and subscribe. And you can see all these people who are on the podcast. You can see the video over there if you're a video person instead of an audio person. So my guest today has a book releasing today, and her name is Karie Cassell. And as a dietitian for about 30 years and in the wellness overall for 40 years, Karie has worked in acute care, long-term care, community, and developed chronic care model for a diabetes program in the 90s, which was her first in her home city. Karie is a wealth of health with study in traditional and non-traditional medicine, diabetes educator, and an IOC sports nutritionist diploma. After discovering missing pieces in the curriculum for her, she took it upon herself to certify as a life coach. Upon discovering a treasure trove of pieces, she filled her successful practice after noticing positive changes with a whole approach to wellness. She wrote the Domino Diet, which is taking a 360-degree change in using the Domino Diet formula. Karie's a dietitian on a mission, bringing back the true meaning of the word diet while putting the heel back in health with a message that it's time to fast your diet. It's time to fast your diet thinking and fill your healing thinking in the Domino Diet formula. That formula is thought, breath, hormones, feelings, actions, and results equal freedom, or something like that. We'll get into that a little bit more. It's hard to, the way it's written, to do that. But welcome, Karie.
Thank you for having me, and good job with that. And you just made me sound, I think, better than I even realized. So I think that's kudos to you in the way that you intro.
Fantastic. You wrote it. So you know it was going to sound, I always love that when people say, oh, that was a great bio. It's like, thank you. I wrote it myself.
But it's different when you hear it back.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very, when you write it, for all of you out there, when you write your bio, it's really hard if you're not like a big, to use the Trump word, braggadocious person. It's hard to like pull out all those things that are really key about yourself. So yes, it's fabulous. So I'm so excited to have you today because one of the reasons that I was excited about your book when we got it was that you approach dieting in an entirely different way than all the other books out there. And you actually struggled with putting the word diet into the title. So tell us about what was up with the struggle.
Oh, did I ever struggle? Well, certainly summers around hitting 50 and after being in perimenopause for about 10 years at that point.
Weren't we all?
I was just losing my joie la vivre or my passion or my life for being a dietitian. And it was so sad for me because I just loved that career. And I'm talking past tense because now it doesn't feel like it's just dietitian anymore for me. Nonetheless, it was time to toss in the towel, I thought. And I struggled with the fact that it wasn't the first time that you hear, oh, eat some fruits and vegetables. That might be a good idea. Hey, you should go for a walk. That's a good idea. Implementation was definitely the challenge. And so what had happened is I was going to throw in the towel. I ended up finding more tools for the trade, so to speak. And through the middle of the night, I have this idea. What would some people call that? A dream, a daydream, an inspiration, something or other takes place where I see these dominoes, and they're all wooden dominoes, very specific, falling. And I could sort of see this formula, realizing that it's our thoughts that lead to how we breathe And I knew that our breathing created a system within our hormones, but I thought, I don't think most people know that. And I think that's so important. So here it was, I was starting to see that there's this curriculum that's sort of spilling out of me that isn't just in the world of diet. Nonetheless, in that same daydream state, I hear the word Domino Diet. And I think that sounds catchy enough, but I argue back and forth with that voice because the word diet has a very negative connotation, I think, and has become that case. And ironically speaking, the true origin of that word in the Greek language is dieta, which means a way of life. And I thought, well, that is true. It is a way of life to be however you eat. And why don't I bring that back? How about I help people revolutionize that whole concept again and bring it back? So I toyed back and forth, but nonetheless, it lands with the Domino Diet as the title. So I struggled with the word, but I also heard along that journey, not everyone reads self-help books that talk about self-development the way that I maybe have studied. And I sort of heard this voice saying, this will be the bridge for those who haven't. They might still pick up a book that has that sort of gravitational pull, but they'll see quickly, hopefully by the front cover, for instance, that there's a formula that goes beyond the diet. Diet's actually at the end.
That's very, very true. So, what impressed me the most about this was that when we talk about overeating and emotional eating, like you have an explanation for it that I don't think many people realize that there's a reason we do it. And not only that, and I'm going to have you explain that in a second, the life coaching aspect you brought to this was root causes. Like, how do we stop it forever? Because most of those people, they emotionally eat and then they starve. They emotionally eat, they starve. They balloon, they go back and forth. The woman with, I'm buying the woman with, the size 10 and the size 4 in her closet, and she goes back and forth, everything in between. So tell us about how that technical body breathing piece that you have goes with this emotional eating component.
Yeah, I'll speak kind of twofold to that, because most of us are very familiar with the word willpower. And the analogy I talk about in the book is it's sort of like holding a beach ball underwater. You can only do it for so long. That type of force energy, the ball pops back up. And so does our thinking, unless we go to empowering or the will to empower. And that knowledge and connecting the dots means actually going to the basics. First, of course, how you think. Sometimes you don't even know what you're thinking, but you might catch it maybe in the way you're breathing. And if you don't catch it there, you can catch it elsewhere. But it comes down to this. Most of us by default, we've been designed for survival, and for centuries and centuries and centuries, the name of the game was to survive, to eat to survive. And we're very ingrained in our thinking about not being hungry. And it kicks in by default, a majority, the fight flight response. Most have heard about that. Well, that fight flight response is based on how you breathe. Your brain is listening, so to speak, or feeling how you breathe. So if it's shallow, it's likely going to respond with a fight flight response. It doesn't know, are you in danger? Do you need to run from something? So it's getting all systems ready, versus the opposite, which is, calm breathing. When you're breathing a certain way, your brain will read that. Oh, you're safe. So a different cascade of hormones occurs based on either type of breathing. And now imagining, you're driving and you're thinking about a fight with your spouse, or you're in traffic, and you're frustrated and you're eating your sandwich along the way. And you're more than likely, even though there's no mammoth, you're going to be breathing and acting as though you're in the fight flight response, and therefore not digesting or absorbing your nutrients optimally, and also potentially bypassing the whole fact that you ate and then craving later for more, versus being really present with it, breathing, calm. And you'll absolutely, because really actually under the calm system, it's called the parasympathetic system. Another wording for that is rest, digest, create. So right there in the title is digest. It's optimal digestion. You're going to have more absorption of nutrients and more serotonin, which means potentially more fulfillment.
Right. So there's not, so I love what you just explained, the scientific reason why this happens. So it's not just a theory, it's actual science behind it. So another thing that really impressed me, and I know I just told you before we got on, you told me about your body goes through a renewal process, your body's metabolism, every 120 days. And, it's always a gift when people bring me a book and I learn something, and it kind of cued that I'm a big sugar whore. You guys all know that. Please don't send me candy anymore. But so I actually gave up sugar. I'm on day 68 as of, this isn't the 31st. We're recording this the beginning of August. Day 68, no processed sugar. And it's weird because I learned sort of the number one, the cravings piece of it. I craved for about the first 10 days and then it was gone. But there was also something else that happened there that touches your life coaching, where I also felt like I was emotionally out of sorts for those 10 days. And some of it might have been the addiction, because I kind of likened it. I did this before for a 30-day where I didn't do it for 30 days. And then on day 31, I had sugar. And then I went on a 3-day sugar bin. And I looked at it like I was an alcoholic who like didn't drink for, it's exactly the same thing. It's an addiction.
Yes.
So, it was actually a test of your theory. Like I had to dig down in that 10 days and go, what the hell is going on? Why am I so emotional? What is it I'm missing? And I figured out it was anger. Like the
Yeah.
sugar was anger. I ate sugar when I was angry, and I may not have been like, I'm going to do this or I'm angry, but like a subliminal anger. So talk about that renewal process, because I'm halfway through that 120 days and I feel great, and I'm not craving. So how does all
Yeah.
that work? And I mean, does that work with everything that we're doing?
Well, the answer is twofold. First, under anger is that fight flight response. And the idea is to flee and run. Stocked up muscles and all the fueling that's required for that. So if you're in the fight flight response, you're thinking survival, you're thinking sugar, you're thinking things that make you survive. So that would be potentially why those triggers are subliminally there, as you described it. As for the renewal process, which is kind of a slightly different twist here, your body renews, well, quite constantly, actually, depending whether it's skin cells, intestinal cells, you name it, cells. But a measurement of your health is often done when you go to the doctor and they say, go to the lab, and your red blood cells will be drawn and they're measuring your actual health by that. So be it iron or otherwise. And the good news to me was when I realized and learned in my science degree that your red blood cells, for instance, last 120 days or 4 months. And a brand new batch will be made and up leveled, hopefully, if we eat a certain way, for instance, in 120 days, meaning also that you're never so dynamic in a pause, like a hibernation. There's always renewal potential going on. So with that potential, I already realized that through studying fat cells, for instance, or membranes, that your membranes of your cells will be stronger if you eat healthy fatty acids. Okay, we know that if you have more calcium intake or healthier diets, that your bones grow better when you have broken bones. So what about when we're eating a certain way, thinking a certain way, surrounding with supports, positive thinking? Studies are showing that absolutely you're up leveling your renewal process. And so I use the red blood cells as a marker and as a goal target to say, well, in 120 days, since you'll have a brand new batch, how about you make that your goal so that your next batch will be starting you off with that much more optimal health, well-being, and so forth. And as you're experiencing, you're seeing some changes within serotonin, you're seeing changes within chemistry, I suspect. And because you're simply noticing means your metacognition, meaning self-thinking, meta meaning self, cognition meaning thought, is dialing upwards with it. And from a healthier mindset comes more healthy thinking and therefore a healthier body. Never the other way around. And unfortunately, that's how our medical system has been for many years, at the symptom level versus the mind.
Very, very, very nice. So here's another thing that always bugs me about diets that your book addresses. there are all these fad diets like keto, just eat protein. And, I don't know, there's one where you just eat a lot of fat. Like I did like that diet at one time. I'm fairly thin now, but I like the one with lots of bacon. Right? Who doesn't? But there's always this, it's eat one family of foods and cut out the others. Can you speak to that? Because you don't recommend that at all.
I don't, for a plethora of reasons. You introduced the fact that I've been in wellness for a long time, which made me privy to seeing trends. I worked in alternative medicine at the beginning. And at that point, it was carbohydrates. This was the 80s. And it was carb up, carb up, carb up. And then to the 90s, it was it was fats. Percentage of fat, all these formulas. You might remember spiky hair, Susan Powder, I think was her name. And then into the next decade, it was protein. And all along, I thought, why is this happening? Because they're all important. Underneath these macronutrients, carbohydrate, protein, and fat are called macronutrients, are the micronutrients. Why is no one talking about these? You can't just simply say, don't eat carbs or don't eat fat without knowing that there's these micronutrients. And micronutrients are the vitamins, the antioxidants, the fiber. If you take out one group, you're taking, I use the analogy, a home with 4 walls. You're literally taking a wall of support out. So if you don't understand what carbohydrates truly are, or fats and vice versa, then taking one out could be detrimental. You're not going to up-level your red blood cells, for instance, because there's certain nutrients that you'd be taking out. So I believe in a flexitarian sort of eating, where you're conscious of omegas and where that comes from, and you're thinking about meats maybe. But if you're vegan or vegetarian, you just have to know where the iron and B12 comes from. And if you're on a Western diet, you need to know about balancing. So I think they all belong if there's fine tuning, but you don't know what you don't know, and it could be harmful too. So best to keep them all there and fine tune, I think, with portion control.
Really, really good. So a little bit more about the book. One of the things that is really catchy, and I'm going to have you just rattle a few off. She has the best sense of humor and the titles of your chapters. What is the one about Jack Daniels?
Oh, yeah. That was called Digesting Your Feelings with Your Friends, Jack and Daniels. I wanted to bring in actual case studies. I changed the names, and this was a man's point of view on digesting feelings, and would be sometimes with alcohol, not necessarily. You mentioned cravings, and that can be shopping cravings, and it can be smoking, and but in this case, it was alcohol, and how eventually this poor fellow ends up with gout. And these are true stories, and how when it came right down to it, it was a mask for other things, and suffocating himself in the way of his corporate job, not really living the life he really, really, truly was designed to do and have and be. And once that was extracted, using the life coach hat and the dietitian hat kind of almost followed after the fact, it just ignited this individual that was otherwise angry, dousing the fire with more Jack and Daniels. And eventually the symptoms, which will happen to all of us, your body will speak to you through symptoms. Mm-hmm. And that got his attention. And again, well, we extracted his true dream, which you might have to just read about it, but it ends up that he's a singer, and he's in a band, and that actually is what alleviated all of his symptoms, because it was incented by this idea of, I want vitality to fulfill my dream. Vanity no longer was working, as it doesn't for most of us as we get up there in age. Mm-hmm. And so it just was a great way to ignite a desire level in him that is in all of us once we get to excavating, I call it, to the dream.
Yeah. And this is where that life coaching comes in, because, you could have said, okay, quit drinking. Okay.
I tried that. That's the old hat way back in the day.
Yeah. but I think that's where most diet and exercise book lie is, have willpower, be disciplined.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is there an underlying cause why? I think I mentioned to you last week, I actually went on a trip with somebody who's diabetic who proceeded to eat sugar an entire day and then, complain about how good he didn't feel good. And you kind of look at it and you can see from the outside, like, you're sabotaging.
Yes. And
Like,
we talk about that in the book. We have hidden sabotage fears and fears of success and some of the reasons. And it goes way back, way back. You don't want to be kicked out of the herd, kind of that far back.
mhm.
And once you begin to well, I didn't know that. Nobody talked about that. Nobody taught me either. And it just came with the life coach hat to be able to bring it all together and bring back the passion. So the towel's no longer thrown.
Yeah.
Back at it again.
Do you find that that people get to a point with their diet where they finally have to go back and heal some of this? Maybe that food has been an avoidance of going back and healing some of the childhood things.
Oh, 100%. I also think that society's way, juvenile thinking, we're still coming out of an era of the survival thinking. And that this strategy of having the diet and the scale being a measuring tool, I think is a distractor. I think we're really afraid of what's around the corner from that. So we kind of have this pit stop on the journey of eating healthy. And lo and behold, it's not. It doesn't make us happy. The number of the bank account didn't make us happy either.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's very, very similar to how we measure by numbers, period. Our IQs, how long we were married, our birthday, it's all measured by numbers. So this is just yet another one of those. But around the corner from that is something else, as it was for Steve, the character in the book I talked about.
Yeah. And I think COVID has added to that in a sense, because people sat around, they were anxious, they ate, and it was that fear of the unknown. What was going to happen? And so a lot of people have had to embrace that. And what bothered me, and I know I told you this over and over, the pet peeve of COVID for me was not encouraging people to go out and diet and exercise and give up those things that put them in that high risk group. They said, go get a vaccination or go get this. It was never, walk.
Yeah.
You have all this free time. Go
how
walk.
you enhance your immune system.
Yeah. How you enhance your immune system. Is there elderberry? Are you eating right? Or are you shoving crap in your mouth? And I think that was one of the biggest things. It's like, why aren't you talking about that? There's a high risk group. I mean, what did they call them? Not the older people, but the people that had those high risk health. I don't remember what they called them, but they didn't really encourage those people to do something different.
We call them comorbidities. And
yes,
there's this extra risk. And again, it comes down to, if you think back when it first began, the toilet paper craze, if there wasn't a fight flight response to that. Right. And then it was all this fresh produce was still sitting in the grocery store, and the cans were limbed. There was hardly any cans left. I thought,
yeah,
we're just going backwards. Why? Because we really went right into survival, and we were buying cases of things because we were so afraid of hunger.
Yeah. But I have to say, the one thing that disappointed me is the Diet Coke aisle. Like when I went, it was wiped. And I remember saying to one of my children, like, well, there's a necessity. Like, really, people? You can't live without Diet Coke when we're all going to die?
And so was the alcohol.
Yeah, the alcohol. Here in Utah, I have to share this. Here in Utah, we have actually state stores you have to go to. And I went to get a friend of mine a wine gift for doing something nice. And I don't drink, so I never go to the state store. There was a freaking line out 6 feet apart to the street, through the parking lot and through the street. And people were walking out with full shopping carts because they don't sell anything but alcohol. And I remember going home and going, wow, like Utah's drunk.
Ironically, my daughter, who's a yoga teacher, was losing some of her classes and so forth due to COVID. So as a second job, she worked in a liquor store. Well, that one, she was busier than heck. Meanwhile, she was offering free yoga classes online.
Mm-hmm.
Not as well attended by comparison. So, so it's exactly what you said.
Yeah, it's so hard to do yoga when you're wasted. I would imagine. I mean, like I said, I don't drink, but I can barely do yoga not wasted. So now that we've covered that, Karie, where your book is coming out today, it's already hit the bestseller list. It hit it back in July. She was a hot new release, so it took pressure off of her today. And she had a party day before yesterday, which I'll propose that you probably hit the bestseller list from that too. So where can we find your book and how can we get a hold of you?
Well, due to some kind people that have assisted me to upload on Amazon, we are on Amazon. The audiobook will soon be released too, by the way, but not quite. And the best place probably is the dominodiet.com. And whenever you're in doubt, anything Domino Diet. So if you search that up, you'd find me. My email's been lately too, mostly popular at info@thedominodiet.com as well.
Okay,
fantastic. So essentially, that's probably the best way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming today and talking about the book. I'm super excited for this release because I think you're on to something.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's been my pleasure. I hope that women really get something out of, there's a subchapter I have called Menopause. Yeah. And need I say more?
No, you have some great chapter titles. It was really fun marketing this book.
Good to know. Good to know. Well, I look forward to answering questions from anybody who reaches out as well.
Great. Thank you so much.